The Limbo Woman. White, 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 the sheets are white, her nightgown is white, the pillowcase is white, and the large bowl of water in her hand is also white and motionless, nothing moves. Everything is white, fixed and still, resembling nothing. She stares at the bowl of water. The water doesn't stir. She doesn't blink. She blinks so little that water forms in her eyes, it sways, it circles and brims over from the bowl of her eyes and drips into the water bowl. And in this vast nothingness the water stirs. The water stirs, and tears drip into it, forming ripples in the water bowl, which are many regular ripples. The water stirs and waves rise, a world of waves. The waves increase. So much so that the water spills out of the bowl. The waves engulf everywhere. They circle the room, and she, with all the whiteness and stillness around her, falls into the swirling waves. A gentle hand emerges from the middle of the wave circles and caresses her cheek, wiping her salty tears. She doesn't want to lose the warmth of the hand that slips down her cheek. She turns her head and bites the finger. It's rough and salty. The saltiness tastes so good in her mouth you can't imagine. Her head gets dizzy as she spins in the wave circles along with her room's white, nothingness-like objects. She still has the salty finger in her mouth, sucking it greedily. Her head spins and she no longer understands. She's just in rotation. She turns, spins and goes. Everything is hot, hot, and what a bad feeling she has in her mouth, which is full of sand and gravel in this rotation. It's disgusting, but she is unable to do anything. She just spins in the swirling waves. Like votive bread, 12 hands stick to her sides and pull her up from the whirlpool of flowing sands. 12 strange hands roam over her body, constantly shifting. The murmur of meaningless sounds swirls in her head. Everything spins. She doesn't know if she's dead or born. Black veiled faces keep passing before her eyes. Is it one person who multiplies in rotation, or are there several? Maybe 6, because these unfamiliar hands still squeeze 12 points on her body. Behind these black veiled faces, the white horizon is visible, the white ground and sky are visible. Again, everything is white except the veils on these women's faces. Now she no longer sees them. The white sky, and the feeling of 12 points of her body being squeezed, tell her they are carrying her in their hands. She turns her head down. Bare feet keep sinking into the white sands and coming out again. She is still in the disgusting torment of sand and gravel in her mouth, nose, head and eyes. From up there she spits, she gags and spits again on one of those feet. The feet stop. The head of one of the women turns towards her. 2 eyes are in front of her face, separated from her only by the width of 2 veil windows. The murmur subsides. Anger is evident from the piercing eyes. Suddenly all 12 hands let go of her, and she is thrown onto the hot sand right in front of the spat-on foot. A shadow falls over her. The foot owner bends and pulls something out between the spat-on toes, a fish ear. Something that is not supposed to be there between her toes unless a mouth has brought that fish ear to the desert, and spat it out between her toes. The black-clad women didn't know what that meaningless object was. They didn't even know its place was in the sea. They just knew it had no place in the desert. So this stranger carries things with her, things that those women don't have, and maybe without knowing what they are, they await them. Again 12 hands come towards her, each grabbing a corner of her white dress and lifting her, but this time gently and with respect, a little friendly and careful too. There is something in this woman. She also wondered if it was empty. She still remembers the saltiness of those caresses. However, she doesn't remember anything of her strange passage. But she knows something has happened in between that has taken a load off. She feels she is full. Maybe she is pregnant. Those women don't know what a shell is, and that something is supposed to be inside it, but all 6 know there is something in that woman. Maybe she is pregnant or supposed to give birth in this barren desert. Gradually the hands became more careful, and now and then, these cares turned into caresses in the middle of the body, a belly that started to grow. She was going crazy over how she had ended up in this desert, after a short afternoon nap. What happened to that caressing hand? Now how can she go back? What is she doing among these infertile women? What do these eyes behind the windows want from her that they don't let her sleep? The black woman knew few things but knew one thing well: she must not be lost. So she must not sleep. Just as sleep had brought her, sleep could take her away. So they appointed a snake to coil above the pregnant woman's head, and constantly draw the sharp, thin tip of its tail across the seam of her eyes. She thinks to herself there is no escape. She can neither sleep nor even die in the longing for sleep. Maybe she has no choice but to give birth. To leave behind whatever she has. Perhaps she can leave this hell because she did not doubt that this place was hell itself. If only she had never spat that fish ear on that woman's foot, if only she had never emerged from the whirlpool of flowing sands, if only she had not surrendered herself to the whirlpool of those white waves of water, if only her salty tears had not dripped into the water bowl, if only she had not sought that caress so much, if only she had never wished to leave, and had occupied herself with a cup of tea and given up on the afternoon nap. But she didn't, and now she has to endure the tail of this cursed snake that draws across the seam of her eyes like an eyeliner alternately. She has to be patient. All this sleeplessness was not worth that afternoon nap that day. But what's done is done, and she has to endure it: 9 months of sleeplessness, childbirth and separation. Only then, if they don't covet her 2 milk-filled breasts, maybe she can return. Wait, woman. Wait until your bloated belly bloats more. Split in half from the middle. Become 2 separate humans. Then, be left to your own devices. Go Godspeed. Be free. Go wherever you want. Very soon, like bread dough, she rose and swelled and reached the point of bursting. Those women had not given birth until then, but they quickly sensed that something was up. The time they had come to find out what was inside this woman. They appointed another snake. They hung the woman from the snake's thick rope. Another snake coiled around her belly and started to tighten the coil. Her eyes rolled back into her head. She was about to fall asleep. But she must not sleep. While hanging from the giant snake, they swung her. Swing, 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 until her body became thin in the middle, and the snake was still tightly coiled around her belly. Those framed eyes all saw that one person emerged from another, and hung from her by another cord. The woman's face flushed, she sweated, turned purple, pale and froze. A strange smell emanated from her skin, the pleasant aroma of salt. She gave off a scent that made the veiled women greedy. One of them kissed the woman's face and started licking it. They had gone crazy from the smell of salt. They took the bloody salty baby towards their noses, sniffed, and started licking greedily like pregnant women who madly smell and eat damp plaster and straw. They now knew what the woman had to give them. They didn't think they had to separate it from the umbilical cord. The woman was burning in the agony of sleeplessness and childbirth, swinging in her limbo, and no one was cutting her umbilical cord. But sooner or later, the umbilical cord dries up on its own. Even if it is not cut, it dries up and breaks independently. Of course, if those salt-eating women would let it. The blackness of the woman's eyes rolled back into her head. She had open white eyes, and despite the scaly eyeliner stick that had plucked out all her lashes, she fell asleep. She slept and was lost. Just as she was swinging the circular path of the snake's coil, she went, and none of those 12 hands could stop her or prevent her from crawling between her white sheets. She left. She returned as if she had never left. If it weren't for this umbilical cord, it was as if she had never left. If it weren't for this umbilical cord, maybe she would never even remember that in an afternoon nap, in the desire to go, she had left, and in the desire to return, she had returned. The thing that messed it up was this very umbilical cord that was wrapped around her hands, feet and throat, and its end had gone into the sheets and white cloths and got lost. But don't be afraid, woman. The umbilical cord eventually dries up and detaches from the baby's belly button. Of course, if these salt-eating women would let it. They followed the trail of salt from the baby until they reached the salty rope of the umbilical cord. They licked the bloody human-made rope from end to end with such greed that its elastic texture remained fresh. It neither dried up nor tore. It never ever tore. And the woman swung into the limbo of her salty fate without belonging anywhere.